Hey everyone, welcome back to our July online experience for Hope City. So glad that you're here with us. My name's Adam.
And I'm Ashley.
And as a church, we are a brand new community here in Northwest Arkansas. We do 3 things a month, and we would love to invite you into it. We gather as a community physically in person, where we talk life, faith, Jesus, everything in between. We do that the first and third Sundays of every month. We throw parties just to hang out because we think Jesus loved to party, and we do too.
Yeah.
And then we find ways to serve our community to make a difference. So, Ash, what are some ways beyond this online experience that people could get involved if they want to be part of our community?
Yes, so we're super excited. Our next gathering is on July 18th, and that is at the after school program in Springdale. And that starts around 10 a.m. We have snacks and goodies, and we just hang out, and then we go until noon.
And be sure to check the comments below. The address, all that stuff is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can also come bring your family and your friends to our pool party on July 31st at the Springdale Aquatic Center. And we will update you with the link below with time and information as well.
And I promise you, if you come, this will be the best pool party you've been to all summer. This is not just for the kids. Like adults, we love pool parties as well. But beyond that, if you want to get connected with us, if you want to get involved or find out more information on who we are as a church, what we have going on, there are a few ways you could do that. We have an online connect form. It's hopefornwa.city/connect. Just go there, click the link that's there, fill out that form. We would love to follow up with you, answer any questions that we have. And then Ash, on social media,
yes,
people can get involved here.
Definitely follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Hope City, Arkansas. You can find us on Instagram at Hope City NWA. Like, comment, share this video, and we would love to follow you back.
Yeah, so we've got a great experience put together for you. What we're taking a look at is what happens when life change actually starts to happen as we follow Jesus. So we've got some teaching. We've got a song that's going to end us out, and then we'll be back at the end just to remind you on some next steps that you could take with us if you want to get involved. Thanks again for being here. Well, hey, welcome back to Hope City, Arkansas for our July online experience. This summer, we're looking at what it means to live out our mission as a church, and that's to help people experience Jesus in a way that will change their lives and impact generations with his hope. And so last month, we had an incredible conversation with some friends around a table about what it means to experience Jesus. And I hope if you missed that, you'll go back on our website, hopefornwa.city/messages, and you can check out that experience around the table with my friends. But what we found last month was that for many of us, our experience with Jesus up to this point, it's been based on maybe a sermon that we heard preached, or what church we grew up in, or maybe even the religion or the rules we were taught to follow along the way. But Jesus is way better than all that, isn't he? I mean, he's a person who's meant to be experienced. And in order to experience a person, it isn't about the religion. It isn't about the rules. It's about a relationship with Jesus. And what we find is as we come to experience Jesus and we build a relationship with him, like something starts to happen in our lives. Jesus actually starts to change our lives, doesn't he? I mean, all of a sudden, the mundane, everyday stuff in life, it starts to have some meaning and purpose behind it. And we're invited into a community where we don't have to have it all together, and we don't have to do this life alone anymore. Like there's a seat at the table for us in this community called the church. And there's hope, right? There's hope for the parts of our lives that we thought were dead and empty. There's hope that if Jesus is who he claims to be, that relationships and addictions and depression or anxiety, that work or lack thereof, it doesn't have to rule every aspect of our lives anymore. See, when we come to experience Jesus, he doesn't just leave us where he found us. Jesus actually starts to change our lives. But here's the thing with life change, and I know you know this to be true, and I know it to be true as well. Life change always comes with a cost. Life change always comes with a cost, right? I mean, think about it. Let's just take hobbies like diet or exercise, or for me, my main hobby is mountain biking. A couple years ago, I got into mountain biking, and that hobby cost me something. It cost me money, and it cost me time. It cost me energy to learn how to ride. It cost me effort. It cost me some skin. Just this past weekend, it cost me skin when I wiped out when I was riding. Or how about something more serious? How about like an addiction? In order to see the temporary stuff go away from an addiction, the temporary pleasure, the temporary relief that we get, and to find lasting freedom, we actually have to give something up. Life change costs us something. See, with life change, we have to give something up in order to gain something else. Again, life change always costs us something. And see, with Jesus, as he starts to change our lives, what we have to give up, sometimes it feels big and it feels significant. At times it feels impossible, right? But what he offers on the other side is something better than anything we could ever imagine. What Jesus is offering us is a better way to do life. And so what I want to look at today is the story of some of Jesus' closest friends while he was here on this earth. It's a guy named Peter and his brother Andrew, and their two best friends, James and John. And these four men, they weren't just friends, but they were in business together. They were fishermen that worked the Sea of Galilee that was basically like a big lake. It was in northern Israel, and these guys, they were blue-collar, rough around the edges, didn't have it all together kinds of men. They were small business owners, and they were entrepreneurs who relied on their best efforts, and let's be honest, they're fishermen, a little bit of luck to provide for their families. They were taking over what was likely their family businesses from their fathers. Now, a little bit of context, in that day, all Jewish boys, including these men, they would have gone through the equivalent of elementary school, where they would learn the first 5 books of the Bible that are known as the Torah. But then along the way, there would be a cut where the lower performing students, those who weren't so smart, i.e. not the best of the best, they were told to go back and work the family business and pick up a trade. You just aren't college material. Anyone ever heard that one before? And that's these men, these fishermen. They didn't make the cut. They were raised in the school of hard knocks, and they were street smart even if they weren't book smart. But then one day, these men, they had an experience with Jesus that started to change everything for them. They've been hearing stories about this man named Jesus who could be the Savior that they've been looking for. Jesus came along in John chapter 1 and he offered them a simple invitation. He said, hey, just come and see. And so they went and they spent time around a table with Jesus, and what they experienced that night with Jesus was enough to start to change their lives. Because when this new rabbi, this new teacher, this new friend invited them to follow him, these fishermen actually said yes. Now again, these weren't some naive religious men. They were hardworking, blue-collar fishermen. They'd been around the block, and there was just something about what they were experiencing with Jesus that made it all worth it. They were willing to give something up because Jesus was changing their lives. And if you line up the gospel accounts chronologically, what you're going to see is that they spent the next 18 months with Jesus. They went to a wedding and they saw Jesus turn water into wine, and they spent time in Jerusalem and they saw Jesus flip over tables and run the religious crowd out of the temple, the religious crowd that was exploiting the poor. They crossed cultural and racial boundaries with Jesus that people had told them, you should never cross that boundary. You should never go to those kinds of people. They were finding that Jesus is for everyone and his hope is for everyone. And they spent time doing life with Jesus, and they did ministry together. And through that time together, Jesus was changing them. But throughout those 18 months, they were also going home. And they would go fish on the side because they had families to take care of. See, we know that Peter had a mother-in-law, which means he also had a wife. Maybe he had kids. He had a responsibility to his family. And we know that James and John, they worked with their dad, and they were probably preparing to take over their family business soon. There was a succession plan that was probably in place. But then Jesus would ask them to do something so radical, so extreme, that's hard for us to even imagine. Jesus is going to ask them to leave their jobs and their families and come follow him. And he's going to teach them how to fish for people. So time out. I mean, what does that even mean? Like, these guys, they knew fishing and they were pros at it. And Jesus would just ask them to up and leave it? I mean, let's be honest. No thanks, Jesus. I'm out on that one. And what does fishing for people even mean? I mean, catching someone in a net or with a hook, like, this sounds extreme, right? But these guys, they actually said yes, and they went with them. I mean, can you imagine? Either they were incredibly naive, which we established that they weren't, or there was something about what Jesus was doing in their lives that made it worth giving up their careers for. See, what Jesus was inviting them into was the type of life change that would help them become who he created them to be. Jesus was using what was familiar, fishing, to explain the new purpose and mission for their lives. They were being invited to help other people come to experience Jesus so he could change their lives as well. And they all lived happily ever after. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if that's where this story ended? But if that's where this story ended, it wouldn't be what? It wouldn't be real, would it? Because after a few months out on the road with Jesus, that's when real life started to hit. Peter's mother-in-law got sick, and I have to imagine the bills were piling up at home, and maybe the electricity has just been turned off, and Jesus has brought these guys face to face with some pretty insane people. I mean, literally, demon-possessed people are showing up at their doors. And they had to be wondering in this moment, was it really all worth it? I mean, isn't that how it tends to go with life change? Eventually, the honeymoon wears off, and real life happens, and we go back. We go back to the familiar, to the things that we're comfortable with, the things that we can control. We start to believe that the change wasn't real, or it wasn't really worth it, or it was just too hard. And so we go back to what we know. We go back to fishing. At least that's what Peter, Andrew, James, and John did. But Jesus wasn't done with them yet. In Luke chapter 5, starting in verse 1, it says this, that one day Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, on the shore of a lake. And he had crowds pressing in on him, listening to the word of God. And he noticed 2 empty boats at the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them, and they were washing their nets. And stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, which was Peter's nickname, or name before Jesus nicknamed him Peter. He asked Simon, its owner, to push out into the water. And so Jesus sat and he taught from the boat, and he taught the crowds from there. Apparently, Peter's gone back to fishing. And when Jesus had finished speaking, he said to Simon, Peter, now go out where it's deeper and let down your nets for some fish. Master, Simon replied, we've worked hard all night and we didn't catch a thing. I mean, we're the fishermen here. But if you say so, we'll go let our nets down again. Have you ever been there? I mean, the one thing you're supposed to be good at, the one thing that is supposed to provide for you and your family, the one thing that you've always done, it just isn't coming as easily anymore. See, that's Peter. He's given it his best efforts, and he's tried to follow Jesus, and life still happened. And then he went back to fishing, and he's not catching any fish. You can almost hear the defeat in his voice. Like, if you say so, Jesus, I'll let the nets down again. But I'm going to be honest with you, Jesus, I don't think I'm going to catch anything. But in this moment, Jesus is about to show Peter something when it comes to life change. Yes, life change costs us something. But when Jesus comes into our lives and he starts changing our lives, when our best efforts run out, is when Jesus does his best work. See, Jesus has not given up on Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Verse 6, they let out the nets in the deep water, and this time their nets were so full of fish they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners from the other boat, and soon both boats were so full of fish and on the verge of sinking. And when Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus, and he goes, Lord, just get away from me. Please leave me. I'm such a sinful man. For he was awestruck at the number of fish he had caught, as were the others with him. And his partners, James and John, you know, those other guys that had left fishing behind, the sons of Zebedee, they were amazed as well. See, in this moment, Jesus is teaching these professional fishermen something important when it comes to life change. Life change comes at a cost. And when our best efforts run out, that's when Jesus does his best work. When it gets tough, he is more than capable of taking care of everything we need along the way. I mean, these fishermen, they're just blown away. Their boats are literally sinking with more fish than they've ever seen in their lives, I have to imagine. And in this moment, that question of, was this really worth it? That question that maybe drove them back to fishing, it's answered in a single instance. Because they have more fish that are worth more money than anything they've ever seen. And I think Peter, he realizes this. And like we do sometimes, I think Peter's convinced that Jesus is done with them. Because he says what? Like, oh Lord, please leave me. I'm just a sinful man. And some of us, we've been there, haven't we? Others of us, we're there right now. Maybe we've given up on following Jesus, or it feels like Jesus has given up on us, and we're convinced that there's no chance left for people like us. But thankfully, Jesus isn't done with Peter yet, and he's not done with you either. In verse 10, Jesus replied back to Peter, Simon, and he said, don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people. And as soon as they landed, as soon as the boat got back to shore, they left everything, and they followed after Jesus. See, Jesus wasn't done with Peter yet. And he's not done with you either. Jesus is showing he's more than capable of taking care of Peter in the ways that Peter thought he could care for himself. And he would give Peter a mission and a purpose greater than anything he could imagine if If Peter would let go and allow Jesus to change his life. Jesus wasn't done with Peter, even when Peter went back to fishing again and again. And he's not done with us. He pursues us. He wants to change us into who we were created to be. Life change always comes at a cost, doesn't it? But when our best efforts run out, that's when Jesus does his best work in us. In Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10, Paul put it this way. He says, "For it is by grace, God's undeserved favor, that you have been saved through faith, your faith in Jesus. And it's not from yourselves, it's a gift from God. You can't earn it on your own. It's not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork. We're created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." So yes, life change comes with a cost, but on the other side of that cost is something greater than we could have ever imagined. Look, as we experience Jesus and as he starts to change our lives, we actually start to become the people he created us to be. See, for Peter, it was becoming a fisher of men. And as Paul said, you and I, we are God's handiwork. That word literally translates masterpiece. We are God's best work, and he created us on purpose and for a purpose. And here's the thing with a masterpiece, right? An amazing work of art. If you talk to an artist, or if you are an artist, it just takes time, doesn't it? Like changing, creating, it just takes time. And the same is true of following Jesus. He will change us. And if you're like me, I want it to happen now. But the truth is, it just takes time. It took time for Peter, and it took time for us. See, I don't think Peter understood what hung in the balance of his decision to leave fishing behind and go learn how to fish for people with Jesus. See, Jesus had a mission and purpose for Peter greater than anything Peter could have ever imagined. Jesus was changing Peter's life, and Peter was Jesus' masterpiece. And ultimately, that would lead to a day where Peter would preach a sermon in Acts chapter 2 where over 3,000 people would come to follow Jesus. And because Peter and Andrew and James and John and so many others, they came to experience Jesus, and Jesus changed their lives, and now he's impacting us generation after generation with his hope. We stand here today because of that work. But that change took time, didn't it? And in that time, Jesus didn't give up on these guys even when maybe they'd given up on him. He pursued them because he loved them, and they were his friends, and he changed their lives. So what about you? Like, what or who hangs in the balance of your decision to follow Jesus today? To let him change your life? And look, it's going to take time. Jesus may not ask you to give up your job, but he may ask you to learn how to live like him in your workplace. Jesus may not ask you to leave your family. In fact, I'd argue he'd probably point you back to your family as the place to live like him. But he might be asking you to live like him in your neighborhood with your family. Or how about this? Maybe he wants to change you, parents, into the type of people that get to know Jesus because of your impact on your kids. I've heard it said this way: the first Bible your kids will ever read is you. Maybe Jesus wants to change your family through you. And he isn't done with you yet. He's changing you. And that change is going to take time. But who or what hangs in the balance of your decision to follow Jesus and let him change your life? Life change comes at a cost, yes. And Jesus is more than capable of taking care of everything you need along the way. He's not given up on you. And he's offering you a better way to do life. We're going to sing this right now. Maybe Jesus is actually bigger than we ever thought.
Let's continue to worship today. We worship you. Speak to me when the silence steals my voice. You understand me. You understand me. Come to me in the valley of unknowns. You understand me. You understand me. Yes, you understand me, God. You understand me. So I throw my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I understand me. You understand me. Oh, and help me reach the faith that's underneath. You understand me. You understand me. Oh, you understand me, God. You understand me. So I throw my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you I will rest in the Father's hands. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. I will rest in the Father's hands. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. I will rest in the Father's hands. Lay it at His feet today. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. I will rest in the Father's hands. Lay it all down. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. So I throw my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. So I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought you
Well, hey, thanks again for being here today. And man, this teaching for me personally, this is kind of more of a response of where I am in life right now. Like, I need to remind myself Jesus isn't giving up on me. He's not giving up on us. And in the middle of a really tough season for us personally, like, He's changing us. And that's why one of our values here at Hope City is we're all in the same boat. So what are you going to get from us? You know, even though we're the pastor of this church, we're in the same boat with you. We're in this community with you.
Yeah, and if any part of this resonates with you, or if you're looking for a community, if this sounds like something you want to be a part of, no matter what you've done or what's been done to you, no matter what you believe about yourself, life, Jesus,
Yep.
You know, everything around you, you have a safe space to process through that, and we'd love to connect with you. And
Yeah.
you can follow us and message us on here. Fill out our online connect card that we mentioned earlier. hopefornwa.city/connect.
Yeah, and we've got some great stuff coming up again. We've got a gathering next Sunday, July 18th, 10 a.m. to noon. Details are in the comments below, but we meet at a space called the After School Program that's at I-49 in Sunset in Springdale. So if you're local to Northwest Arkansas, come join us. And then pool party.
Don't forget about the pool party.
Yeah, bring
It's
your
gonna be
floaties.
great. Invite your friends, bring
invite
your
your
family.
friends, yep.
It's going to be awesome.
Details below, July 31st. I think it's 3 to 5:30, but you'll have to check the comments below just to be safe. Look at the comments. Thanks for being here today. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.